Today's critique examines a video script summarizing the book The Unfair Advantage, exploring how success is a combination of fair play and the inherent privileges outlined in the Miles framework. It's a really solid draft, but getting right to the feedback, the script inadvertently undermines the core premise of the book by repeatedly reclassifying the author's unfair advantages as fair play.
Yeah, this is a really common issue when a writer tries to summarize a framework that they maybe don't entirely agree with.
Right.
So the weakness here is that throughout the breakdown of the Miles framework, which stands for money, intelligence, location, education, and status, the narrator constantly argues against the book's categorization. Actively dismantling the framework while trying to summarize it just creates a really disjointed narrative.
Yeah, exactly. Because as I understand it from the notes, the argument here is that the narrator sees things like manufacturing luck, developing inner status, or pursuing self-education as easily replicable. For instance, when discussing luck, the narrator literally says, I'd probably put luck into the fair play section instead. And their logic is that you can expand your surface area for serendipity by blogging or networking.
Right, and they do the same thing with status, right? Dismissing inner confidence as an unfair advantage just because anyone can work to develop it over time. But, is there a risk that focusing solely on recategorizing these traits might overlook the core utility of the Miles framework?
Absolutely. It leaves the audience completely confused about what actually constitutes an unfair advantage. It diminishes the whole unique value proposition of the book being reviewed.
Yeah. If I'm watching this video, I tuned in to understand this paradigm-shifting concept of leveraging unfair advantages.
Right.
But the guide taking me through the material keeps telling me, well, actually, most of this is just fair play.
It feels a bit like a chef deconstructing a recipe to show you the individual ingredients, but in doing so, they forget to tell you why the dish tastes good together.
Oh, that's a great analogy.
Thanks. You're left with all these raw concepts and no idea how to cook the dish. So the suggestion to fix this is to reframe these personal disagreements, not as dismissals of the author's framework, but as an advanced synthesis.
Okay, so showing how fair play serves as the engine to generate unfair advantages.
Exactly. We don't need to silence the narrator's hustle-oriented worldview. We just want to align it with the book's architecture.
So how does that look in the script practically?
Well, instead of saying, I'd probably put luck into the fair play section, instead, the script could say, this reveals a fascinating hidden relationship. Relentless fair play, like continuously publishing blogs or networking, is exactly how you expand your surface area to capture unfair luck.
Oh, I like that. That's a crucial pivot. The fair play becomes the tool, and the unfair advantage becomes the resulting asset.
Right, and you can apply that exact same mechanism to the status section. Instead of dismissing inner confidence as a fair advantage, frame it as a transmutation.
Okay. Like giving them a concrete example of that shift?
Yeah. The script could read something like, while you may not have the outward unfair advantage of Elon Musk's fame, applying fair play to build unshakable inner confidence creates a psychological unfair advantage over competitors who easily give up.
By phrasing it that way, you just remove the friction entirely.
Completely.
You're no longer tearing down the Miles acronym, you're actually teaching the audience how to actively construct the very advantages the book is talking about. It changes it from a passive book review into an applied philosophy.
Yeah, and once you fix that underlying friction in the theory, you still have to look at how the audience connects with the material emotionally.
Oh, definitely.
Which brings us to our next major area. The narrative buries its most empowering and universally applicable concept that perceived disadvantages can actually be leveraged as unique strengths.
Yeah, this is so important for audience retention. The weakness here is that the script introduces the letters of the Miles framework using highly unrelatable, extreme examples right out of the gate.
Like the billionaire origin stories?
Exactly. For money, we get Evan Spiegel growing up in a multi-million-dollar house with powerful lawyer parents. For intelligence, we get the Collinson brothers, where one invents a programming language at 16 and the other gets into Harvard before finishing exams.
Right, it's intense. But to push back slightly, don't extreme examples provide the starkest, clearest illustration of a concept? I mean, if you want to explain money as an advantage, showing a billionaire's origin story leaves zero ambiguity.
That makes sense. Yeah, they do provide clarity, and I'm not saying the writer should cut them entirely, but could the evidence also support a different conclusion? Like the idea that extreme examples might inadvertently trigger a fixed mindset in the viewer before they even reach the reality growth mindset section?
Ah, I see what you mean. Clarity shouldn't come at the cost of audience engagement.
Precisely. The flaw is that the script introduces these highly privileged examples back to back, and it isn't until the final third of the script that the narrative introduces the idea that having no money forces creativity.
Or that living in a cheap location extends a startup's runway. Right. By backloading that crucial nuance, the first half of the script just feels exclusionary to the average viewer who lacks wealth, status, or genius.
Yeah, you're spending the first 5 or 6 minutes basically being bombarded with proof of how unspecial you are compared to tech billionaires.
Without being handed a lifeline. They might just click away, assuming the video isn't for them. So the suggestion here is to invert the presentation of the examples.
Okay, so bring the nuance forward.
Exactly. Immediately pair the extreme privileged examples with everyday hidden advantage counterparts the moment each letter of the framework is introduced.
Let's get into some concrete examples of how to do that. When discussing the M for money and Evan Spiegel, the script should immediately follow up with the inverse.
Right, so the script could say, but a lack of money is its own unfair advantage. A bootstrap founder is forced into creative, low-cost marketing strategies like viral organic content that a well-funded competitor relying purely on expensive ads would never discover.
Notice how that instantly changes the viewer's internal monologue? The viewer thinks, wait, my empty bank account is actually forcing me to build a better foundational skill set.
It hooks them because they suddenly see themselves in the framework. And we can do the exact same thing for the L, for location.
Definitely. Contrast the Silicon Valley example right away with the advantage of living in a low-cost area. Explain how a longer financial runway reduces panic and allows for better long-term decision-making.
Compared to a startup burning through massive cash just to pay San Francisco rent? By bringing that double-edged sword concept forward, it transforms the piece.
How the viewer can win with the exact hand they were dealt.
Which makes it highly applicable. And that naturally brings us to the final hurdle, the transition from defining the MILS framework to the final advice on mindset lacks actionable steps for the audience to effectively audit their own lives.
Yeah, there is a massive gap in practical application here. The weakness is that the script explicitly asks, how do we find out what our unfair advantages are?
Which is a fantastic question.
It is, but then it immediately deflects into the origin story of how the authors came up with the MILS acronym, rather than actually answering the question.
I noticed that too. Later, it notes that everyone should determine their path of least resistance, but it provides absolutely no methodology for doing so.
None at all. It jumps straight from the definition of the framework to this theoretical discussion about Carol Dweck's growth mindset.
Right, which is just a meta-concept. Knowing you have the capacity to grow tells you that you can move forward, but the Miles framework is supposed to be the map that tells you where to move.
Right. Right now, the script drops the map on the table and just walks away. Building on that point, what if we looked at it from the perspective of the viewer sitting at home with a notebook? Is the connection between knowing the acronym and actually changing their career path fully established in the material, or is that an area to potentially bolster?
It's definitely an area to bolster, because if you just tell them to have a growth mindset, you haven't actually taught them how to leverage their unique location or status metrics.
Exactly. So the suggestion is to insert a clear bridging mechanism. Transform the Miles framework from a theoretical taxonomy into an interactive, personal audit for the viewer.
I love that idea. Providing a homework element naturally aligns with the educational tone of the piece. And frankly, it increases viewer retention because people will save the video or pause it to take notes.
So for a concrete example, we could integrate a Miles mini audit right before the mindset section.
Yeah, the narrator could ask the audience to literally pause the video and answer 3 specific prompts.
Like, what is a topic you read about for fun that others find exhausting?
Oh, that's a great prompt. Or, what unique niche community do you naturally have access to?
It forces the viewer out of a passive consumption state. They're participating now. But we also need to show them what to do with the answers to those prompts.
Right, so providing a concrete scenario of how a regular person might map those traits is essential. The script could say, for example, if your M is low, but your I for insight into a specific subculture is high, your path of least resistance is creating content for that subculture.
Rather than trying to outspend competitors on broad ads, by giving them that specific mapping scenario, you completely bridge the gap.
You prove that the framework is a mechanical lever they can pull today, which anchors the entire script in utility.
And it makes that subsequent discussion about the growth mindset land with so much more impact. It's not just vague encouragement anymore. It's the fuel they need to execute their personalized plan.
Exactly. So to recap, this critique focused on three main areas. First, harmonizing the friction between the book's theory and the narrator's worldview by showing how fair play generates unfair advantages.
Second, elevating the concept of disadvantages as hidden strengths earlier in the piece to retain audience engagement.
And third, inserting a practical self-audit so the audience can actively apply the Miles framework. Implementing these high-level structural shifts will transform this material from a simple book summary into a highly actionable masterclass.
We'd really love to see how these suggestions take shape, so please feel free to submit the revised material back to us for another look.